Between the lines. For years, Lena Carter has played by the rules, climbing her way through the ranks at Sinclair Publishing with unwavering determination. But when she's assigned to work directly with Ethan Sinclair, her enigmatic and notoriously disciplined boss, everything changes. The attraction is instant, dangerous. Neither can afford distractions, especially when office relationships are strictly forbidden under the CEO's ironclad policies. But tension simmers beneath their professional exchanges, every meeting charged with unsaid words and fleeting glances. Then a scandal threatens the company, a leaked manuscript, an industry exposé that puts careers on the line. Lena and Ethan are forced to work late nights, unraveling the mystery before it destroys them both. But as the pressure mounts, the lines between duty and desire blur until they can no longer resist the pull between them. One moment of weakness, one kiss that could cost them everything. Now they must decide: break the rules and risk their careers, or bury their feelings and pretend it never happened. Because in this world, love is the ultimate risk. Chapter 1. The Rules We Break. Section 1. The Acquisitions Meeting. The American sun had barely climbed over New York City when the sleek glass facade of Sinclair Publishing reflected a promise of new beginnings and hidden dangers. Inside the meticulously designed conference room, a buzz of conversation mingled with the aroma of freshly brewed espresso and the scent of polished wood. Lena Carter sat at a long mahogany table, her gaze drifting over neatly stacked manuscripts and color-coded folders. Every minute detail of her day had been rehearsed precisely. Her posture was perfect, her smile measured. Today was the acquisitions meeting, a critical juncture that could define her rising career. But beneath the carefully composed exterior, her heart pounded against the constraints of corporate decorum. Lena's thoughts roiled as she reviewed the latest submission, a manuscript that whispered of raw talent and the promise of a game-changing story. This isn't just another book launch, she reminded herself internally. This is your chance to shake up the industry. And yet, every time she glanced across the table, her pulse spiked, not because of the pitch, but because of the man who ruled this room. At the head of the table sat Ethan Sinclair, the formidable head of acquisitions. Clad in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that hinted at both precision and passion, Ethan surveyed the room with a gaze that made even the most confident falter. Known for his uncanny ability to transform struggling manuscripts into bestsellers, his reputation was built on razor-sharp instincts and an unwavering commitment to the bottom line. Yet there was an unacknowledged contradiction in Ethan. While he governed the office with an iron fist, his eyes, rarely seen soft, occasionally betrayed a spark of something far more personal. As the meeting began, Ethan's commanding voice filled every corner of the room. Ethan. Good morning, everyone. Today we decide which voices will define our next season of titles. Let's get started. Lena cleared her throat and rose, her hand steady though her mind raced with unspoken questions. She advanced toward the centerpiece, a hefty manuscript from a relatively unknown writer with a name that promised mystery. Lena, confidently, I've reviewed Jacob Pierce's submission. It's raw, emotional, and with a few refined edits, I believe this can be our next breakout title. Ethan leaned forward, his dark eyes fixed on Lena. His tone was measured, laced with the quiet authority she both admired and feared. Ethan. Pierce hasn't delivered a book in 5 years, Lena. What makes you think he deserves another chance? A murmur ran through the room as every pair of eyes flickered between the two, sensing the tension rising. Lena's heart skipped a beat. Was this challenge merely a professional inquiry, or had he touched on something deeper? Lena, steadying herself precisely because of that gap, she replied, voice soft but resolute. His absence from the literary scene has built anticipation. With the right guidance, he can transform vulnerability into brilliance. I envision a comeback story, one that will resonate with our readers on every page. For a long moment, silence reigned. The only sound was the soft rustling of papers and the distant hum of the city outside. Ethan's gaze was intense, not just evaluating the manuscript, but also probing Lena's conviction. Ethan quietly, almost to himself, very well. You'll take the lead on this project. But there is no room for delegation. This is your vision from start to finish. That simple decree sent a chill down Lena's spine. Direct collaboration with Ethan? The invitation was as thrilling as it was dangerous. In a world where crossing professional boundaries could shatter careers, her heart suddenly raced with both anticipation and apprehension. Section 2. Glances and unspoken words. After the meeting adjourned, the conference room emptied into a maze of quiet corridors and open-plan offices. The low hum of typing and distant phone calls filled the space. Yet Lena felt as if she moved in a separate reality, a hidden layer where each step was laden with unspoken promise. While gathering her notes at the polished reception desk, Lena caught a fleeting glimpse of Ethan through a frosted glass wall, his silhouette framed against the city skyline. His back was turned, but every muscle of his tall frame exuded controlled energy. In that moment, she felt the dissonance between the professional veneer and the personal undercurrent that thrummed silently between them. Finding herself unable to shake the intensity of the encounter, Lena retreated to a quiet corner of a glass-walled conference room turned temporary retreat. There, she allowed her thoughts to spill out in a flowing internal monologue. I've dedicated my life to these manuscripts, to perfecting this craft. But now, with every project, every trade of ideas with Ethan, there is a dangerous thrill. His approval is a rare gem, but his attention is equally terrifying. I must be cautious. This isn't about passion, it's about career. Yet the way he spoke today, there was something intimate in the way his eyes lingered, as if he believed in what I could do, not just what I presented on paper. Unbeknownst to her, just outside her secluded refuge, Ethan himself found a moment of respite in his private office, a minimalist space lined with first editions and framed accolades. Behind the cool facade of his ordered desk, Ethan allowed himself a measured sigh. His mind wandered back to the meeting and to Lena's defiant confidence. Every day, I enforce every rule to maintain order, yet there's something about her, a spark that disrupts my meticulous plans. I have a duty to firm policy, a duty to protect both the company and the careers of those who work here. But can I really condemn the brilliance of someone who challenges me so? He wondered. As Ethan pondered, a soft chime from his computer pulled him back to reality. There on his screen was a note titled Emerging Talent, a reminder of the project in question, and perhaps, a veiled message that their fortuitous collision might have been orchestrated by fate far beyond the mundane confines of office policy. Section 3. The First After-Hours Encounter. Later that evening, after the buzz of the day had settled into a quiet lull, the corridors of Sinclair Publishing emptied out, leaving behind only echoes of footsteps and dimly lit computer screens. Lena stayed behind, stuffing her documents into a worn leather bag as she prepared to leave. Despite the exhaustion, a peculiar excitement urged her to linger in the shadowed halls. As she passed by a row of glass-enclosed offices, the door to Ethan's office stood ajar, a rare oversight in an otherwise secure environment. Driven by equal parts professional curiosity and personal longing, Lena hesitated, her hand hovering over the cool metallic handle. In that pause, doubt wrestled with desire. Then, as if sensing her internal struggle, a familiar voice emerged from the half-light. Ethan, softly, Lena, I didn't expect you to still be here. Startled, she turned and found him leaning casually against the doorframe, a subtle invitation painted in his slight, enigmatic smile. Candles of tension flickered between them as the empty hallway became the stage for their clandestine meeting. Lena, pausing, I was finishing up, but it seems fate has other plans. Closing the small gap between them, Ethan stepped forward. His eyes searched hers, not with the calculating gaze of a boss, but with genuine curiosity and something far more personal. Ethan, you handled today's meeting with a rare blend of passion and precision. I've rarely seen anyone so unafraid to push boundaries in this industry. Lena's face flushed. Whether from the warmth of his words or the intensity of the moment, she couldn't tell. She took a measured breath. Lena, I believe in the transformative power of a story. Every book on these shelves was once an idea that dared to challenge the norm. And sometimes, breaking a few rules is the only way to nurture something extraordinary. For a moment, silence enveloped them as Ethan's gaze softened. Ethan, quietly, rules, they keep our world in check, but they often snuff out brilliance. You remind me that sometimes we must risk everything to reach the truth behind a story. At that, a shared understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the cost of daring to be different, of wanting something greater than the scripted lines of their workday. Section 4. Conflicted Hearts and Lingering Shadows. The conversation lingered like an unclosed book as they eventually returned to the rhythm of their separate worlds. Lena left the office that night with her thoughts echoing loudly in her mind, a fierce blend of ambition and forbidden desire. Outside, the city lights blurred into a mosaic of hope and uncertainty. In the solitude of her modest apartment, Lena scribbled in a leather-bound journal, poring over the day's events. Every word danced between professionalism and an ache for an intimacy that the firm's strict policies forbade. If only rules could bend like light, reflecting nuance instead of absolutes, she wrote in a quiet, determined hand. Ethan's words haunt me, reminding me that brilliance is often born from chaos. Can I dare to let passion seep into the margins of my carefully drafted life? Meanwhile, across town in a sleek high-rise, Ethan sat alone at his desk after the last clock tick in the office. Amidst the awards and accolades, his thoughts repeatedly circled back to Lena. In the sterile silence of his evening, he allowed himself a moment of vulnerable confession. The irony is palpable. I've built a fortress of rules to shield this company, yet I find myself disarmed by her courage. The risk is not just our professional futures. It's the possibility of experiencing something real, something uncharted, and that terrifies me more than any scandal could. A gentle knock at his door startled him from these thoughts. It was his assistant, coming to ensure all was secure for the night. With one last lingering look at the empty space where Lena had stood, Ethan closed his eyes, steeling himself for the battles of the coming days, where every secret glance and softly spoken word could set off a domino effect. Section 5. The Unspoken Pact. The next morning arrived with the crisp chill of early autumn. As employees streamed into the office, the energy carried over from the previous night's hidden encounters. Yet, beneath the everyday buzz, a silent pact had been made, an understanding that some rules were meant to be questioned. Lena took her seat at her desk, her fingers hovering over the keyboard as she recalled Ethan's words from the previous evening. Across the open-plan office, Ethan worked diligently, yet every now and then, their eyes would meet briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement of the delicate line they were both skirting. In a moment of quiet rebellion, Lena slid a handwritten note into an envelope and discreetly placed it on Ethan's desk. The note was simple. Some stories are worth breaking the rules for. L. When Ethan later discovered the note, he felt a surge of adrenaline that made his pulse quicken. In that small scrap of paper lay a challenge, a gesture of daring vulnerability that hinted at the possibility of rewriting their roles entirely. As the day unfolded, both Lena and Ethan navigated their professional responsibilities with a newfound tension. The floors of Sinclair Publishing now seemed charged with the possibility of both creative brilliance and dangerous passion. Every folded piece of paper, every whispered conversation in the corridor, and every lingering glance felt like a secret invitation to explore what lay beneath the surface of tradition. For Lena, this was more than just an office romance. It was a testament to the impossibility of keeping art and life confined within strict margins. For Ethan, it was a reminder that the heart is not governed by rules, no matter how immaculately they are enforced. And so, amid the clatter of keyboards and the murmur of strategic discussions, the spark between them began to blaze, a flame that promised to ignite both the world of publishing and the very fabric of their lives. Chapter 2. Crossed Lines and Uncharted Territories. Section 1. A New Dawn. The morning after the clandestine after-hours encounter dawned with the restless energy of New York City. The office at Sinclair Publishing was already alive with soft clatters of keyboards and muted exchanges as employees settled into routine. Yet for Lena Carter, the early light cast long reflective shadows of the previous evening's charged moments. Sitting at her desk, Lena's thoughts raced with questions. Every keystroke seemed to echo with the memory of Ethan's whispered validation from the night before. As she booted up her computer and checked her emails, she found herself unable to shake the warmth that had seeped into her chest from the stolen words. Rules? they often snuff out brilliance. Her mind wandered freely. How can a single conversation unravel so many years of careful restraint? Must I now risk everything? A career built on precision, for creative passion and personal truth? Meanwhile, across the office in his meticulously organized space, Ethan Sinclair arrived at his desk to find something unexpected waiting for him. A small handwritten envelope placed neatly atop his stack of project reports. Gingerly, he slid it open and read the note inside. Some stories are worth breaking the rules for. L. A quiet thrill pulsed through him as he reread the words. The neat, deliberate script was a challenge and a confession in one elegant stroke. His heart, so long contained by the rigid strictures of corporate policy, unexpectedly trembled at the thought that someone as bold and brilliant as Lena was willing to risk exposure for a whispered truth that only they seemed to share. Seated in the quiet of the early morning, Ethan allowed himself a rare moment of introspection. Every rule I followed was meant to protect this company, and myself, from chaos. Yet what if chaos is the very precursor to greatness? In Lena's daring move, I see not recklessness but a call to something genuine, something that transcends the limits of our current roles. That thought lingered as the day's work unfolded, tinting every meeting and every discreet glance with a hint of impending rebellion. Section 2. The Manuscript Strategy Session. Mid-morning brought the promise of business as usual. The topic of discussion, Jacob Pierce's manuscript, the project Lena had championed the day before. With the manuscript in hand and a backdrop of determined colleagues and hushed conversations, Lena was summoned to a small, glass-enclosed meeting room reserved for project strategy sessions. Ethan entered the room with his usual quiet intensity. As the door closed behind him, there was a brief pause, a silent, wordless recognition of the unspoken promise that had been made. Papers were spread over the conference table, and the manuscript lay open as if inviting every critical eye to savor its potential. Ethan, leaning forward, his tone measured. Lena, walk me through your vision for Pierce's work. How do you see his story re-emerging in a market that's grown cynical over silence? Lena took a deep breath, steadying herself. The room felt smaller when it was just the two of them, the attention of a few trusted colleagues dimmed by their shared intensity. She began slowly, allowing her passion for the written word to bloom in her carefully chosen phrases. Lena, I believe that Pierce's long absence has built a mystique around his name, a wound waiting to become a triumph. His manuscript is raw, bursting with emotion, and if we can hone its focus without diluting its soul, we have a revolutionary comeback on our hands. The narrative essence isn't about the story itself alone, but about the journey from obscurity to brilliance. Ethan's eyes, dark and searching, flickered with an appreciation deeper than professional endorsement. Ethan, softly, with an edge of vulnerability, it's rare to see someone champion a manuscript without a hint of personal investment. Your conviction is both commendable and disarming. Around them, the air vibrated with the sparks of creative energy that now blurred the lines between business strategy and personal desire. While the discussion continued with statistical evaluations and market analyses, Lena and Ethan exchanged glances that spoke volumes, a language of subtle defiance against unwritten rules. During a pause in the discussion, one of the senior editors interjected. Senior editor, this is a risky drive. If the manuscript stumbles, it could spell disaster. Lena's voice remained resolute, though her eyes betrayed the slightest quiver. Lena, risk in our world is merely the price of innovation. I suggest we trust in the art as much as in the numbers. Ethan allowed himself a small, approving smile. That smile carried the weight of both challenge and hope. In that moment, the meeting was no longer merely about a manuscript. It was about rewriting the underlying sentiment of the place, proving that passion and precision need not be mutually exclusive. Section 3. After-hours revelations. As twilight spread its indigo cloak over the city, the office was quieting down, yet the sense of possibility pulsed like a living heartbeat. Lena remained behind, her determination fueled by the morning's discussions and the promise of the manuscript's potential. She found herself once again drawn to the idea of collaboration, this time in the solitude of an empty conference room where the only witness was the delicate glow of a single lamp. Ethan, too, found himself lingering in the corridors after everyone else had left. It was as if the office itself conspired to prolong these stolen moments, a haven away from prying eyes and the stifling bureaucracy of policy. In the nearly deserted conference room, amid scattered papers and the soft hum of the air conditioner, Lena and Ethan met again. The conversation this time was less about project strategy and more about whispered revelations. Ethan, with a note of hesitancy. Lena, sometimes the lines we've drawn in our professional lives feel like chains. Yet here, with every word you speak about the manuscript, I sense the promise of liberation. Lena's eyes shone with determination, her hand brushing against a stray manuscript she'd left on the table. Lena, every story I work on is a rebellion against silence. I believe art must challenge, disrupt the norms that confine us. For me, it's not just about publishing a book, it's about daring to question the very rules that stifle creativity. But I must ask, do you ever wonder what happens when we risk that vulnerability? Ethan slowly moved closer, his voice low and earnest. Ethan, every day, when I wake up, I remember why I built this fortress of rules. It wasn't to keep the world out, but to protect us from ourselves. Yet when you challenge those boundaries, it's as if the fortress trembles, and that, Lena, is both exhilarating and terrifying. The air between them thickened with the intensity of unspoken promises. Their conversation drifted away from the confines of business and ventured deep into the realm of possibility, where the merging of passion with purpose could rewrite destinies. In that dim light, surrounded by neglected drafts and discarded coffee cups, time seemed to suspend its relentless forward march. They spoke of art and risk, of the delicate balance between ambition and personal truth. Each word felt like a thread weaving them closer together, until the boundaries of employer and employee blurred into something more profound, an alliance of hearts daring to defy convention. Section 4. Temptations and Reminders of Consequence. Just as the intimacy of the after-hours session deepened, fate reminded them harshly that every action in a corporate environment was under constant scrutiny. As Lena and Ethan prepared to leave the conference room, a sudden knock at the half-closed door startled them both. Stepping into the light was Olivia, a vigilant mid-level manager whose reputation for uncompromising adherence to company policy had spread like wildfire. Olivia, coolly, I'm sorry to disturb you, but I've noticed you two working late, and I must remind everyone that our after-hours practices have departmental guidelines for a reason. Ethan straightened quickly, his mind racing to regain control of the situation. Ethan, with carefully measured calm. Olivia, we were finalizing some strategic elements for the Pierce project. It's vital that we have these discussions in an environment free of interruption. Olivia's eyes flickered with skepticism, but she gave a curt nod. Oh, Olivia, I trust your judgment, but be aware that the higher management will be reviewing our after-hours protocols soon. Please ensure all meetings are documented. Once she turned and exited, Lena exhaled shakily, the close encounter a stark reminder that their burgeoning connection was treading on dangerous ground. The office rules, the ever-watching eyes. It was as if every heartbeat was measured against an invisible ledger of risk. Lena's internal alarm bell chimed. Is this worth defying everything to be true? Her pulse quickened as visions of exposure and scandal danced at the edges of her mind. Yet, in that same breath, she also felt the surge of a newfound resolve, one that whispered that art and authenticity demanded that she take risks. Ethan, meanwhile, reassembled the fragments of their private session with the professionalism he so carefully maintained. Yet, as he returned to his darkened office, he couldn't help but replay Olivia's parting words. Their echo, a constant reminder that every step forward was laced with peril. The truth of passion is never without consequence, he thought. Yet if we do nothing, all our greatest work remains confined behind closed doors. Section 5. A Promise Amid Shadows. Later that night, as the city's lights shimmered like distant stars and the office corridors emptied into silence, both Lena and Ethan sought solace in their separate sanctuaries. Lena sat by her apartment window, scribbling in her journal with feverish intensity. Every stroke of her pen was a declaration, not only of her belief in the manuscript but of her desire to redefine what was acceptable in her life. I will not allow the boundaries of this world to restrict me any longer, she wrote. There is beauty in uncharted territories, whether in art or in matters of the heart. I fear the consequences, but I also fear the loss of silence, the silence that condemns life to page after page of regret. In parallel, Ethan found himself alone in his inner sanctum, pages of strategy documents lying in neat piles before him. Yet his focus now diverged from the numbers and deadlines. The memory of Lena's earnest gaze, the whispered defiance in her voice, became the keynote of his evening reflections. If rules are the scaffolding by which order is maintained, then risk is the wind that brings change. Lena's note, her words, are the quiet revolution that could shatter every rigid line I've drawn. He pondered. I am caught between the need to preserve order and the alluring promise of transformative creativity, and perhaps that same transformation awaits in the language of our hearts. As the night deepened, a quiet pact seemed to form between them, a mutual understanding that though the road ahead was paved with risk, it was a path they both felt compelled to traverse. Whether through whispered meetings or furtive glances across the open-plan office, each secret encounter was a brushstroke on the canvas of a story yet to be authored. The day's events, the heated discussions over a manuscript, the charged after-hours collaboration, and even the near-fateful interruption, now coalesced into a single unyielding truth. They were both willing to risk everything for a story worth telling, their story. And in that silence, framed by the promise of a new day and dreams daring to break free, the forbidden allure of their connection glowed brighter than ever. Chapter 3. The Tipping Point. Section 1. The Warning. The rhythm of routine at Sinclair Publishing was shattered one brisk Tuesday morning. As employees arrived and the soft murmur of routine conversations filled the open office, Lena Carter noticed an unusual tension in the atmosphere. A company-wide memo had appeared in every inbox, a terse directive from the top brass reminding all staff of the strict code of conduct regarding after-hours meetings and interdepartmental communications. As Lena scanned the message over her steaming cup of coffee, her mind raced with the implications. The memo stated, effective immediately, all external communications and off-hour meetings must be recorded on the company portal for audit purposes. No exceptions. Her heart sank at the thought of every whispered conversation, every furtive glance being monitored. A cold shiver ran down her spine as the implications became clear. Something had tipped in the corridors of management, and the company was tightening its grip. In a nearby corner, Ethan Sinclair absorbed the memo in silence. His face, usually unreadable, betrayed a flash of tension, an acknowledgement that the rules, once blurred by passion and ambition, were about to be enforced with an iron hand. He recalled Olivia's cautious warning from the previous night and wondered if higher management, perhaps spurred by a mysterious tip or an anonymous complaint, had resolved to crack down further. Ethan's internal dialogue roiled. Every spark of brilliance carries a risk. Yet now, with every private word recorded, I fear we are not only endangering our creative freedom, but also setting ourselves up to be the next example of what happens when passion defies policy. Lena's thoughts echoed his. Am I ready to risk everything for a manuscript and a forbidden lie? I believe in art, but I never imagined that art would come at the expense of my career, or even my soul. The memo lingered like a dark cloud, leaving both protagonists with a heavy sense of foreboding. A warning had been issued, and the tipping point was drawing nearer. Section 2. The Corporate Mandate. By mid-morning, a series of one-on-one meetings had been scheduled by Human Resources. Lena was summoned to a hushed conference room where Monica Reyes, a seasoned HR manager known for her strict adherence to protocol, waited with a stack of binderized policy manuals. Monica, in a measured tone, Ms. Carter, there have been queries regarding after-hours discussions and project collaborations that fall outside the regular workflow. I trust you understand that protecting the company's interests is paramount. Lena's pulse thumped loudly as she searched for the right words. Lena, quietly, I assure you that my focus has always been on the Pierce project. My discussions with Mr. Sinclair have been strictly professional. Monica's eyes narrowed slightly, a note of skepticism lingering in her gaze. Monica, professionalism is our cornerstone here. I hope you realize that any deviation can jeopardize not just your position, but also the integrity of our entire operation. Across the building, Ethan was escorted into a similar meeting. The HR representative, stern and unsmiling, recited company policy as if reading from a script. Ethan listened, nodding slowly, while his mind trailed back to the ineffable moments that had seemed to defy the rigidity of policy the night before. In his private chamber of thoughts, Ethan mused, "Rules exist to protect us, but sometimes they stifle us more than they shield us. I fear this mandate will not only endanger our project, but also force us into revealing the depth of what lies between us." Each left their meetings with a heavy heart and a secret shared only in their silent, determined glances across the hallways. The corporate mandate was a tangible reminder that if they were to risk breaking the rules, the consequences could be seismic. Section 3. The Silent Rebellion. As dusk approached and the office lights dimmed one by one, a quiet subversion began to take shape. Lena, her mind churning with apprehension and resolve, decided to adopt a new strategy. Late that evening, while the office corridors lay empty, she slipped into a rarely used archival room, a space lined with old records and forgotten manuscripts, a sanctuary away from prying eyes and digital surveillance. There, under the muted glow of an antique lamp, she found Ethan waiting. The air was charged, as if the fused memories of both the joyous after-hours camaraderie and the painful warnings of today had culminated in this one clandestine meeting. "Ethan," speaking softly as he closed the door behind them, "Lena, it seems we're on the edge of a precipice. Today's meetings, the memos, it feels as if the entire system is forcing our hand." Lena's eyes shimmered with both fear and unyielding conviction. "Lena, I refuse to let our creativity be shackled by a mandate. This project, our work, it's more than just numbers. It's a statement about art, about risking the status quo. But if we are to move forward, we must do so with stealth and subtlety." They began to strategize anew, a silent rebellion to preserve both the Pierce manuscript's potential and their own hidden connection. In hushed voices, they discuss ways of encrypting their off-hour communications, methods to work together without leaving as many digital footprints, and even under what circumstances changes should be documented. Their conversation, laced with technical jargon and creative fervor, became an act of defiance against an impersonal corporate machine. Ethan leaning closer, his tone earnest, "We cannot control every piece of data, Lena, but we can control what we leave behind in our hearts and in the work we create. Let's reframe this narrative. Instead of seeing these rules as barriers, let's see them as the very challenge that makes our victory sweeter." Lena nodded, her fingers gently drumming on the scarred wooden table. "We are rewriting the rules tonight," she thought. "This is our rebellion, a promise to each other and to the art itself." The meeting in the archival room was more than a tactical discussion. It was a pledge of mutual support and an affirmation that even under the scrutiny of power, true passion would find a way to survive. Section 4. The Manuscript Unmasked. The following day brought unexpected developments with the Pierce manuscript. Lena discovered a series of annotations in the margins, cryptic comments and subtle hints that suggested the text might have layers beyond its immediate narrative. The manuscript, already raw and emotionally charged, seemed now to mirror their clandestine love. Hidden messages, secret codes, and unsaid truths that lay between the lines. Late in the afternoon, Lena requested an urgent meeting with Ethan in the quiet back office. They sat together at a round table, the manuscript open between them as if inviting scrutiny. Lena, tracing her finger along a margin, note, "Look at this passage. It appears mundane, yet there's a tension here, much like the undercurrent between us. Could it be that Jacob Pierce encoded something personal into his work? A call for revolution against silence?" Ethan leaned in, his eyes examining the faded script. "Ethan, I know it sounds far-fetched, but creativity often hides its deepest truths in plain sight. Perhaps this is a metaphor, a challenge to the status quo. Just as we struggle against the corporate diktats, Pierce might be urging us to break free from our own constraints." Their dialogue was punctuated by long silences and thoughtful glances, each lost moment reaffirming the dangerous parallel between the manuscript's secrets and the secret they nursed. In that moment, the difference between their personal rebellion and their professional endeavor blurred. The manuscript served as both a blueprint for a literary comeback and an allegory for their suppressed emotions. Lena, quietly, with a hint of defiance, every mark here, every underscored word, speaks of a rebellion against conformity. It's as if the manuscript is daring us to embrace risk, both artistically and personally. Ethan reached out, gently covering her hand with his. Ethan, then let that be our guide. We will honor this work by daring greatly, even if it means defying the very structure that seeks to contain us. The revelation transformed their conversation into a solemn pact, one that intertwined their future success with the necessity of their forbidden connection. The manuscript was no longer just a project. It was a mirror held up to their hearts, echoing the quiet storm that threatened to upend everything. Section 5. The Edge of the Abyss. By the time twilight deepened into night, the compounded pressures of corporate mandates and the tantalizing secret of Pierce's manuscript left Lena and Ethan standing at the edge of a precipice. In the private confines of a secluded lounge on the top floor of the building, a space rarely used for official business, they faced the inevitable truth. To truly honor their craft, they would need to embrace both risk and vulnerability. The lounge, awash in the warm glow of antique lamps and the distant hum of the city below, became their confessional. Shadows of doubt mingled with the embers of ambition as they debated their next steps. Ethan voiced low and resolute, Lena, every part of me knows that if we don't follow through on this, we'll be sacrificing not just the manuscript's potential, but the chance to live authentically. The risks are monumental: exposure, career ruin, and personal fallout. Yet, I can't stand by while our passion withers in silence. Lena's eyes shimmered with a combination of trepidation and fierce determination. Lena, I've spent my life perfecting what's expected of me. But art, real art, demands imperfection, raw emotion, unpredictability. I cannot and will not let fear dictate my choices any longer. We risk everything not for recklessness, but for truth, for the story that must be told. Their hands met over the table, the contact a silent vow that transcended the corporate corridors and the claustrophobic expectations that had defined them. In that charged moment, the risk bore not only the potential for devastation but also the possibility of liberation. As they parted that evening, the promise of their daring alliance loomed over them, a constant reminder that they were teetering on the edge of an abyss. The lines between professional ambition and the uncharted territories of their hearts had blurred irrevocably, leaving them to wonder whether they could ever return to the safe boundaries of the past. The world, both inside and beyond these walls, is about to change, Ethan thought as he stepped into the night rain. If we embrace the chaos, perhaps a new era of creative freedom awaits us. And with that, Lena and Ethan, driven by the unyielding force of art and forbidden passion, prepared to leap into the unknown, hearts aligned in defiance of every rule that sought to confine them. Chapter 4. The Unraveling. Section 1. The Corporate Crackdown. The day began with a suffocating chill that was more than just the early autumn air. As employees trickled into Sinclair Publishing, the usual hum of focused conversation was now tinged with anxiety. Lena Carter's morning ritual, sipping strong coffee by her cluttered desk, was disrupted by a new email notification. The subject line read simply, "Immediate compliance update." With trembling fingers, she opened the message. It was a sweeping directive from upper management. All off-hour meetings, external communications, and any data exchanges outside official channels will now be recorded, archived, and subject to review. Non-compliance will result in immediate disciplinary action. For Lena, the words burned like acid, each sentence a reminder that every fleeting glance and every whispered conversation could be the spark that ignited her downfall. Her heart pounded as paranoid thoughts raced through her mind. Have they found out about us? Are our digital footprints already mapping our secret? Across the office floor in his meticulously arranged workspace, Ethan Sinclair felt a similar jolt. The directive arrived with an icy finality, and as he absorbed its contents, a silent turmoil took hold. His normally impenetrable mask of authority wavered for a moment. In the flicker of his expression, one could see the same dread that gripped Lena, a dread that their private rebellion was now under the microscope. Ethan, internally every rule I enforce was supposed to shield us from chaos. Now it seems chaos is coming for us, in the form of data logs and corporate audits. How can we keep our passion safe when every word is recorded? The office, once buzzing with unspoken camaraderie, now felt like a cage. Colleagues exchanged furtive looks as if they, too, sensed that the boundaries between personal freedom and corporate control were collapsing. Section 2. The surveillance and suspicion. The tension was palpable by mid-morning. In hushed corridors and near the water cooler, whispered conversations turned to theories about mysterious emails and anomalous network activity. Lena found herself under the wary gaze of senior team members whose curiosity bordered on suspicion. Every time she passed a colleague's desk, she felt the weight of unseen eyes, monitoring, recording, judging. In her private moments, Lena's inner monologue echoed with conflicted resolve. I've always believed that great art requires risk, that some boundaries must be shattered for true brilliance to emerge. But now, with every step watched, every word archived, I fear that a small spark may turn into a conflagration that I cannot control. Simultaneously, Ethan was summoned urgently by Olivia, a mid-level manager known for her unsparing loyalty to company policy. In a crisply lit conference room, Olivia's tone was clinical as she laid out a detailed report of irregularities. Oh, Olivia. There have been flags raised regarding unlogged conversations and unusual work patterns after hours. Certain projects are now under heightened scrutiny. I must remind everyone that personal and professional lives cannot intermingle on company time. Ethan's jaw tightened imperceptibly. In that moment, he silently vowed that he and Lena would have to tread even more carefully. Yet, even as he reiterated the necessity of compliance to the board, his mind raced with thoughts of how to protect their secret, as delicate and dangerous as it was. Section 3. The Hidden Code. Later that afternoon, Lena returned to the Pierce manuscript with a mixture of trepidation and fierce determination. When she discovered a series of new notations added to its margins, cryptic symbols interwoven with poetic language, it startled her. Had Jacob Pierce, the elusive writer, embedded a clandestine message about revolt and rebellion? Or was it an echo of her own struggle, mirroring the secret codes of her forbidden relationship with Ethan? Unable to decipher the markings on her own, she sought Ethan's counsel. In a secluded back office away from prying eyes, they convened around the open manuscript. Lena, quietly tracing a symbol. Ethan, look at this. These aren't standard editorial notes. They appear almost like a cipher. It's as if Pierce wanted someone to read between the lines, to see a hidden truth. Ethan leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he scrutinized the faded ink. His voice dropped to an almost conspiratorial murmur. Ethan, creativity often thrives in hidden spaces. Perhaps this isn't just about a literary comeback. Maybe it's a challenge, a secret rebellion against the mundanity that the corporate world forces upon us. I see it as a call for authenticity, for the very kind of raw truth we're living. Their conversation lulled into a heavy silence filled with unspoken agreement. In that fading light, the manuscript metamorphosed from a simple project into an emblem of their struggle, a coded manifesto written in the margins of a forgotten page. Each symbol, each carefully placed annotation, resonated with the possibility of liberation, even as the corporate